Okay, we're going to move to the next section really quick, and then we'll end.
I love this. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for showing up and just letting us rant. I mean,
Yeah.
we get so excited and have fun with all this stuff. I hope it's helpful.
Okay, so we talked about input determines output. And in many ways, that's going to apply primarily to us first, of course, because that's built on our way of being, and nothing gets better until I get better. But of course, input also affects our children as well. And so we want to talk about input as well as supporting environments and relationships as it relates to our children because it has a major impact. One of my favorite books, which I actually haven't read the whole thing, but a part I read so far is amazing and so good that it's still one of my favorite books, is Hold On to Your Kids by Gordon Neufeld. And so he talks about this whole thing that's occurred in our society where peer relationships have become more important than parent-child relationships. And he explains how that happens and what we can do about it, and that's why it's called Hold On to Your Kids. But I bring that up as an example of if we're not intentional and careful about the environments and supporting relationships and input our children are receiving, then yes, it ends up being sabotaging. And everything else we try to do in this pyramid is not going to work because we don't have this foundational environment of supporting relationships for our kids. They are going to care about, and he says this in his book, what their peers think more than they care about what you think. And it's literally the blind leading the blind because their peers don't know anything, right? They know what they know. That's it. And it's become a very dangerous aspect of society. And if you have not read his book, you absolutely should. That's one of the great inputs that you can get because it's amazing. Um,
Years ago, I flew to Tennessee, went to this conference of like uber successful business leaders, and got to meet this gentleman. Just a great human being, very very successful, very wealthy, just a great guy. He said, and he's older. He said the worst thing I ever did as a parent was to send my kids to school. Whoa! And then he walked through that, and basically it was along this same concept that it's so easy to lose our kids completely in those paths. Like, you get what I'm saying? I don't want to be misunderstood here.
no.
Okay. um, there are many pitfalls when we just kind of blindly outsource education and send our kids away because they can get lost, like Rachel was explaining, with peers or with some teacher doing something. I don't know, whatever. So whatever that experience, right? So it's easy to let them get lost. So I guess it's just a warning for all of us to, even if you do send your kids to school, please know exactly what's happening there from the teachers, the administration, the curriculum, and their peers. Be aware of that. It's not just something like, oh, whatever. They're just gone 8 to 10 hours a day, and I'm sure it's all fine.
Well, because children are so absorbent. I mean, they're literally like a sponge and they're constantly soaking up the energy and ideas of the people they spend time with. So if they are spending time at school or with friends or with people at church or whatever, they are absorbing those beliefs, those ideas, those behaviors, all of those things. Now,
Yeah, church is not always innocent. We lived in Alaska. Our church had a youth group, and the youth group would get together and smoke weed together before going to church.
church
That's like
activities.
to church activities, and I was like,
One of them was my brother.
well, then that's not the best little environment. even though it's a little church group. They were literally getting together to smoke weed together. Like, okay, so again, like I would be so naive and silly to think, oh, I'll just send my kids to church. It's a church group. Everything that happens there will be good. No, that church group was all getting together to do dumb things.
Yeah.
So we can't just blindly, naively say, well, I'm just going to outsource this off.
And I don't want this to
Yeah.
come across the wrong way. Um, One of the reasons we did decide to homeschool was because I wanted to be in charge of all of the input my children were receiving, especially at a younger age. Now, as they grow, no matter what, they're naturally going to be exposed to more and more that's out of our control, and that's fine. Like, again, we're not saying avoid the world completely and don't let them interact with humans and evil people in the world. That's not what we're saying, of course. But especially as they're younger and then as they grow, I heard once this greenhouse analogy. It's like you want to protect those little growing plants so they can get strong. So then they have the foundation to be able to handle the winds and the rains and the storms of life. I'm using this as an analogy. I'm using the schooling as an analogy for us to understand the concept that it matters who our children are spending time with, who they're talking to, who they're hanging out with, who they're getting their ideas from. And especially when we talk about the pyramid of peace, remember we're always telling you to go down the layers, go back, go down the pyramid, start at the beginning. Sometimes we can't effectively do the other things in the pyramid, like correcting and disciplining or teaching and communicate or listening and learning, simply because they have outside influences that are sabotaging and undermining what it is we're trying to teach or communicate to them. So if that's the case, we have to take a different strategy. We can't just keep teaching and communicating if their supporting relationships are counteracting that, right? We then have to be strategic about creating or introducing supporting ideas, supporting environments that then give us the space to be able to teach and communicate or listen and learn or correct and discipline, right? That's what I'm trying to emphasize with this. Now again, this doesn't mean isolating them, never allowing them to interact with anyone that you don't approve of. Like, it's not about control, it's not about manipulation, it's about diplomacy and influence that we gain from our way of being, and we build it with our own input, and then we can then influence their environment, their input, their supporting relationships, their mentors, which then gives us the ability to use the rest of the pyramid. If that makes sense.